Hello everyone, it's me, Yapaholic, your friendly neighborhood yapper. Today, we're tackling a serious question that's on a lot of minds. Why should the United States be fighting wars for other nations? Should we really continue our role as the world's policeman, and what does that mean for America's future? Let's start by looking at two current conflicts: Ukraine and Israel. Both are very different in nature, but there's a common thread. Both nations are pushing hard for deeper US involvement. And that's where we need to ask ourselves, is this really in America's best interest? Let's begin with Ukraine. Last week, President Zelensky laid out what he called his victory plan. It includes some pretty bold demands: immediate NATO membership, NATO strikes against Russian missiles, and access to Western long-range missiles for attacks deep into Russian territory. You could even call it ambitious. But what's the real goal here? Ukraine is struggling in its fight with Russia, and they know that without massive support from the United States, their chances are slim. So, naturally, Ukraine's strategy now involves getting the US military involved directly. But here's the hard question: does this conflict really align with our interests? Would our lives here in America change if Ukraine ceded parts of eastern Ukraine to Russia? Most people would say no, and yet our leaders continue to pour weapons, funding, and other resources into this fight. Perhaps Washington's answer should be a simple but firm: no more weapons, no more money. You're on your own. This isn't to say we should turn a blind eye, but there are ways to help without being pulled into a war with the nation that holds the largest nuclear arsenal on Earth. At what point does protecting Ukraine start to genuinely risk American lives and resources? And then on the other side of the world we have Israel. Following the recent attacks by Hamas, Israel is now engaged in a full-scale military response and is preparing for potential conflicts on multiple fronts, whether with Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, or even Iran. But here's the catch: Israel doesn't have the military resources to sustain so many conflicts on its own. So what happens? They're looking to the United States, asking for billions in aid and deploying American assets in the region to support their efforts. Already the US has sent over $23 billion in military assistance, and we're deploying systems and troops that could potentially trigger a broader war if they come under attack. Imagine the situation. If American soldiers are caught in the crossfire, that could serve as a tripwire to drag the US deeper into a war that, ultimately, has little direct impact on American security. Washington's answer here, too, should be just like with Ukraine: no more weapons, no more money, let Israel handle its regional issues on its own. So where does all this leave us? Our founding fathers often wrote about avoiding foreign entanglements. They envisioned a nation that would remain independent, one that wouldn't be quick to intervene in foreign wars unless our own security was at stake. That's called a non-interventionist policy. It's not about isolationism, but rather making careful, calculated decisions that prioritize our nation's security and well-being. When we look at Ukraine and Israel, it's time to ask ourselves if our continued involvement truly serves the American people. Or are we being pulled into endless wars that benefit other nations while draining our own resources and risking American lives? The United States can still support allies and uphold its values without being dragged into wars that serve others more than they serve us. In the end, a pro-American foreign policy should focus on American interests first. Thanks for tuning in today. Let's keep this conversation going in the comments below. What do you think? Should we continue our role as the world's policeman, or is it time for a new approach? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. See you next time.